Councilmember Gruel's representative here. Would you like to, you want to go last? Okay. We'll schedule you for Friday. Okay, we have any public comment cards? Okay, we have 2 cards against and this many cards for. So we will call the proponents first. And I would ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. Lorette Healy?
Yes. Just give me a second to put my glasses on. Thank you, Council Member. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from the letter from the president of the Sherman Oaks Chamber of Commerce, Robert Cohn, with his comments and thoughts regarding the application for the name change.
Is it something you can just submit and summarize?
I have submitted a portion of it.
We don't have to read it, please.
Okay, then I would reserve my comments for later, if I may.
No.
Okay.
Please summarize.
Okay. The summary is that we want to thank you today for having us here to submit our application for the neighborhood name change. I would also like to thank both also the folks that are opposed to this for having also stood up for what they believe is the correct position for their neighborhoods. We have worked long and hard on this. We've had a very good experience in really identifying and understanding what makes up our community. We are a diverse community. We are a committed community. We're a community that intends to remain in Los Angeles and become contributors to not only Sherman Oaks, but all of Los Angeles as the years and decades, frankly, go by. I have lived in this area since 1997. I have gotten to know our neighbors very well. Our neighbors' children all go to in the elementary and middle school areas, all go to the schools that are in Sherman Oaks. Most of our commerce is with Sherman Oaks, and we are the only neighborhood that is south of the Orange Line that is in Councilmember Wendy Gruel's district. We believe that the geographical boundary, which is the Orange Line, is a significant boundary. It designates for us the demarcation, if you will, between Van Nuys and Sherman Oaks. I note that the northern section of Van Nuys is also bounded by the Metrolink, and on the west side it is bounded by the 405 freeway. These natural geographical boundaries actually create different communities. We believe our affiliation is more closely aligned with Sherman Oaks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ann O'Connor? After that, we have Caitlin McLean. Why don't you get ready? Go ahead, Ann.
Thank you, Chairman Alarcon and members Zine and Hahn for calling the hearing. A special thanks to Councilwoman Gruel for her support. My name is Ann O'Connor, and I've lived in the Sherman Oaks Van Nuys area since we immigrated from England 52 years ago. The applicants and supporters of the name change have provided reasons which echo the criteria that became the foundation for both Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky's and former council member Marvin Browdy's decisions to approve the boundary change from Magnolia to Burbank. Grant deeds and county assessor rolls identify many properties in the proposed area as being in Sherman Oaks. Some of the deeds are on file with the city clerk and were included as attachments to the application. In 1991, identical circumstances contributed to the decision to move the boundary. In a Daily News article from August 9, 1991, Mr. Yaroslavsky states, quote, "The numerous calls and letters which I have received evidence the considerable confusion which residents of this area have experienced concerning whether they live in Sherman Oaks or Van Nuys," end quote. Mr. Browdy's district deputy, Roz Wyman, went on to say, quote, "Many property owners in this area have deeds signed in the 1940s that refer to this property as Sherman Oaks," end quote. Along with popular support, the deeds containing the Sherman Oaks address were tantamount in the decision of the last boundary change. We encourage you to be consistent with the criteria and logic applied by Mr. Yaroslavsky and Mr. Browdy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Caitlin, and then after Caitlin, we have Leslie Young. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for seeing us today. My name is Caitlin McLean. I live in the proposed renaming area. I am also a stakeholder in Sherman Oaks as well. And I wanted to just address some statistics about owner-occupied dwellings. Based on the most current information provided by California Title Company, and I went over it several times with two supervisors there, Van Nuys consists of approximately 23,337 owner-occupied residential dwellings. The proposed renaming area comprises approximately 1,800. If you do the math, the proposed name change area constitutes only 8% of the residential dwellings in all of Van Nuys. The renaming of the West Van Nuys area to that of Lake Balboa in 2007 consisted of approximately 10,000 owner-occupied dwellings, or roughly 30% of all residential dwellings in Van Nuys at that time, and yet the applicants were granted the right to rename their community to that of Lake Balboa. A precedent has been set with the renaming to Lake Balboa, and we ask that the same fairness be afforded to our application today. We also had some percentages that we'd gotten from them regarding renters, what percentage of renters in the city of Van Nuys compared to other areas around it. And I'll just give you those statistics. Sherman Oaks, it was 28%, Valley Village, 33%, Valley Glen, 28%, Lake Balboa, 25% renters, and Van Nuys, 25% renters. So statistically speaking, the renaming of our community will have a marginal impact on the percentage of renters in Van Nuys, and therefore should only be a benign factor as it relates to the stability of Van Nuys. Thank you.
Leslie, and then we have Kathy Gariner.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you, City Council members. My name is Leslie Young. I'm a 14-year resident of the renaming area and a parent of children attending public school in Sherman Oaks. I would like to address 3 issues in support of the name change. 1, the school our children attend. 2, the neighborhood family's relationship to the community of Sherman Oaks. And 3, community activism with Sherman Oaks on civic affairs. LA Unified School District mandates that children must be able to walk to an elementary or middle school no more than 1/2 mile away from home. Because there are no elementary schools in Van Nuys within walking distance of our neighborhood, our children attend schools such as Kester Elementary, the same public school that Sherman Oaks children attend. To my second issue of our neighborhood family's relationship with Sherman Oaks, how do we access community services and social networks? Our families use Sherman Oaks Parks and Rec Center, the library, post office, banks, and we frequent its churches and synagogues. Our kids befriend classmates who live in Sherman Oaks, and our families develop support systems with other Sherman Oaks families. My third point is that our residents of our area and Sherman Oaks are very cohesive on civic matters. A recent example is how Sherman Oaks and our neighborhood residents joined forces to prevent the installation of a cell tower at Burbank and Kester in Van Nuys. The massive opposition we mounted together yielded over 500 opposition letters and nearly 200 petition signatures. The cell tower was ultimately denied. The civic unity we demonstrated is a testament to our shared concerns, values, and pride, and that we really are one community, that of Sherman Oaks.
Okay, Kathy, and then Jason Wally.
My name is Kathy Gardner, and I do live in the proposed area.
Sorry, the Gardner. Is it,
Gardner.
oh, it is it the, you're right.
Yeah. I'm also a stakeholder in Sherman Oaks, and I'm a member of the Sherman Oaks Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to touch on the economics of Van Nuys quickly here. Like many central San Fernando Valley neighborhoods, Van Nuys was an established middle-class neighborhood as late as the 1970s, but the demographics have changed considerably, primarily due to the defection of the largest employers in the San Fernando Valley. These businesses include industry giants such as Lockheed, GM, Adres, and Fedco, which resulted in a loss of close to 10,000 jobs. Many believe that the increasing cost of doing business in the state of California is one of the reasons so many industries left Van Nuys. Others sees the decision about land use and zoning restrictions over several decades as a contributing factor. Changing the name of a small neighborhood will have no effect on the current economic condition that affect Van Nuys. In the history of Los Angeles, there have been well over 100 community name changes. Most are documented in the book Los Angeles A to Z by Leonard and Dale Pitt. No name change has ever been denied. The reasons vary, but in every case, the change was for the betterment of the newly named community. Thank you.
Okay, Jason, and then we have, is this Zarek Dietz?
Hello, council members. Thank you for having us here. My name is Jason.
By the way, we are joined by Councilmember Hahn.
Hello. Jason Wally, and I am a member of the proposed community. I live at 5800 block of Natick. I bring to the committee's attention the findings and actions of a city chartered commission. The redistricting commission was chartered after the 2000 census to review and redraw council district boundaries. This commission found that the proposed area was an existing community of interest with Sherman Oaks and not Van Nuys. Therefore, the proposed area is the only section of Van Nuys to reside within the boundaries of Council District 2. However, the area north of Oxnard Boulevard was grouped into Council District 6 together with the rest of Van Nuys. This coupling of communities represented an understanding by commission members of the existing bonds between the affected communities as well as the recognition of geographic boundaries. The Redistricting Commission noted that these areas were, and I quote, existing communities of interest. To further support the notion of a contiguous community with the neighborhood south of Burbank Boulevard, which is the current northern boundary of Sherman Oaks, I offer the following. The two neighborhoods consist of primarily single-story residential dwellings on similar-sized lots. Many of the residential homes were built by the same builder, for example, Paul Truesdell. The sidewalks are stamped with the same paving contractor's name, further substantiating the fact that the neighborhoods were developed as an intact community both north and south of Burbank Boulevard. There exists a low propensity of townhomes and apartments on both sides of Burbank. And finally, there is no commercial zoning in the neighborhoods north of Burbank Boulevard and south of Khalifa Tierra, although a high propensity of industrial buildings and commercial facilities exist in the area north of Khalifa Tierra Boulevard. Thank you.
Okay, Zarek, and then we have Vicki Watson.
Okay, my name is Zarek Dietz. I'm a past president of the Sherman Oaks Chamber of Commerce and currently sit on the board of the Sherman Oaks Beautification Committee. And I'm also a resident of the proposed area. The next major street, actually north of Tiara Khalifa, is proposed northern residential boundary, where the renaming is Oxnard Boulevard. Okay, all of the structures on Oxnard Boulevard are commercial and industrial businesses, and they bear absolutely no resemblance to the renaming area, which lies south in the following key ways. Oxnard Boulevard is zoned for commercial use. The Orange Line was constructed on city-owned property immediately north of the Oxnard Boulevard and continues along a commercial and industrial corridor of structures which dissects the proposed renaming area from any of the residential communities that exists to the north of the Orange Line. And then the residential structures in the community that lie north of the Orange Line bears no resemblance to the renaming area, as it is composed primarily of mixed-use housing and apartment buildings. It is interesting to note that the Metrolink line, which separates Van Nuys from Panorama City, defines the northern boundary of Van Nuys. Secondly, the 405 freeway, which has become the western boundary of Van Nuys and now separates Lake Balboa from Van Nuys. Clearly, the industrial zone, which bumpers both sides of the Orange Line, clearly presents a natural boundary that separates the residential community south of the Orange Line from the entire community of Van Nuys. Thank you.
Okay. Vicki, and then John Hillard. Is it Millard or Hillard? Hillard, okay.
Good morning. I'm Vicki Watson. I'm a third-generation Angelino. My parents, of course, grew up here. My mother is from El Sereno. I grew up in Mount Washington myself, and now I'm in Sherman Oaks, but I had lived in the proposed area at one time in my life as well. I'm here to represent the group of individuals who've signed petitions in favor of living and changing our neighborhood. The petition was signed by close to 600 residences living in our area September 2008, and along with the application that's in front of you today. A supplementary email letter was also resulted in another 1,000 letter of email support. So we have that in 1,800 residences. Of course, we have 1,600, an overwhelming majority of people who want to be in this proposed area as changing the name to Sherman Oaks. Not only do we have this support, though, but we have Sherman Oaks residents. I'm one of them. I'm one of the residents of Sherman Oaks who are more in favor of having our area include this area into our community. But we have 400 residences who also signed letters of support to the Councilman Gruhl. These letters were hand-delivered to Mrs. Gruhl and, along with the supporters. And we were actually able to meet with a lot of you in committee, and it was a lot of fun meeting each and every one of you. I hope you consider, our proposal today. Thank you very much.
Okay. John, and then we have Augustine Cebada. I believe that's what it is. Yeah. John.
Good morning, and thank you very much, council members, for hearing us today on the proposed name change. My name is John Hillard. I am a 15-year resident in the name change area, which we are proposing. Also a business owner.
Oh.
In contrast to what Ms. Watson was just speaking about, the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council and the Van Nuys City Council, they both elected to oppose our renaming application. Now, according to Dunn's Neighborhood Council Status Report, which was issued on April 9th of 2008, out of a total population of 78,000 residents, that's 78,000, only 64 of the votes were cast in the most recent Van Nuys Neighborhood Council election. That election was held on February 2nd of 2008. So in a similar vein, out of 60,000 residents which were eligible to vote in the Sherman Oaks neighborhood election held on September 10th of 2008, it gets a little worse. Only 39 residents actually came out and voted. It's not a good statistic. So the only reason I'm bringing these points to the attention of this council, I'm not trying to be dismissive of the important role that the neighborhood councils play throughout Los Angeles, but rather to illustrate that these two particular neighborhood councils, they by no means actually represent the will of the people who are here today. This is relating to a really important issue to 5,000 people who actually live in this renaming zone and area, as well as our neighbors in Sherman Oaks. So what we feel is that the people have clearly spoken entirely about the renaming of this application, and we'd really like it if you could hear our votes and vote with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Augustine, you have general comments. I'm sorry, you were in the pro category, but we'll call you up when we finish this item. Oh, there you are. Okay. Amy Ferguson Wolfe.
Good morning, and thank you for hearing us this morning. My name is Amy Ferguson Wolfe. I am a 22-year resident of Los Angeles and a 5-year resident of the proposed area. I just want to say that my husband and I love our quiet residential neighborhood. We love our neighbors, and we were overwhelmed by the support that we received from numerous Sherman Oaks residents when they tried to build a cell tower immediately behind our house. We feel very affiliated with Sherman Oaks and aligned. One of the main reasons we bought a house where we did is because of the Kester Avenue Elementary School, which is in Sherman Oaks. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. There's more than twice the amount of pedestrian and driving access between our neighborhood and Sherman Oaks as there is between our neighborhood and Van Nuys. Twice the number of streets that allow walking or driving. We are isolated from Van Nuys by nearly a third of a mile of all industrial. There is a third of a mile between our furthest most north house and Van Nuys' furthest most south house. And it's a half of a mile to the closest single-family neighborhood, a half of a mile of industrial that I would have to walk my dog through if I'm walking around until I get to the other single-family residential neighborhood. After the residential area, the industrial area, there are several blocks of predominantly large multi-unit apartment buildings. And I have to ask, what is a community? A community is a group of people who commune. Your neighbors. Who is your neighborhood. Our neighbors are the area immediately south to us because there are no neighbors immediately north to us except for gravel pits, auto body shops, rehearsal studios, cabinet shops. So there's no neighborhood immediately north of us, but there is a neighborhood immediately south of us. So the name change was allowed to Valley Glen, and it was allowed to Lake Balboa. This is the will of our neighborhood and the will of our community, and I would ask that you give us the same consideration. Thank you.
Okay, those are all the comments in favor of the proposal. We have two cards opposed, Jill Banks-Barad and Lydia, what is it? Oh, Mather.
Good morning, Councilman Alarcon and Councilwoman Hahn. I'm Jill Banks-Barad, President of the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council. We were asked by the city to hold a public hearing regarding the proposed name change, and we did that and gave our findings. We had lengthy public hearing in December, and we had a follow-up meeting in January. Listened to many, many people on this subject and debated this among ourselves, the board. A lengthy debate, the pros and cons, and we voted overwhelmingly to oppose the proposed name change. And I'd like to go over those reasons with you. Basically, although the proponents say that they are of common complexion and values as Sherman Oaks, we found no compelling reason to change the name. They mention the schools. This is a specious argument because many of us send our children all over the city to go to schools. They don't necessarily go to their neighborhood school. And also, our high school is Van Nuys High School. The other communities, as they mentioned, have been renamed: Valley Glen, Lake Balboa, West Hills. None of these communities attached themselves to an existing community. That is the big difference. Here's a case where this group of people want to attach themselves to an existing community, Sherman Oaks. And when they talk about self-determination means creating your own identity, not attaching yours to someone else's. They talk about shopping and that they do their marketing in Sherman Oaks. Well, our Fashion Square, Westfield Fashion Square, is a regional shopping center with people coming from all over the valley. And then the same can be said of our restaurants and our shops. Can I just have it?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Use the chair.
Thank you. People come from all over the valley, as well as the west side, to go shopping in Sherman Oaks, to go to the restaurants, to go to the shops. One of the main reasons that we voted against it was, what would this do to our neighbors, Van Nuys? And we really looked at the larger picture. If Van Nuys continues to shrink and communities are cherry-picked, residential middle-class communities are cherry-picked, and the community shrinks, what is left of Van Nuys? This concerns us, especially at a time when Van Nuys is working to revitalize itself. They need these residential communities, and it is an economic issue with Van Nuys. Lastly, both Van Nuys and Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council voted against this proposal. And we say to you with deep respect, we think it would be a slap in the face not to consider what the neighborhood councils voted and to listen to what the neighborhood councils are saying. We really gave this a lot of time, a lot of thought before we made our decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Lydia?
Yes, my name is Lydia Mather. I'm the president of Van Nuys Neighborhood Council. I want to address a couple of things that were, thank you, first of all, for having this hearing. And I want to address a couple of things quickly that were said. In terms of voter turnout, that's why our elections have been turned over to the city clerk. A Saturday morning with half a board up for election, you get a low turnout. It happens. Our councilman was elected with less than 5,000 votes in a 270,000 constituent area. So, you know, that we have a problem with turnout in LA on all levels. So that happens. But let me discuss now what the problem is with this. This is self-determination. I couldn't disagree with that more. I was approached about a year ago by Lorette Healy with this idea. She said she wasn't very involved at the time, and some of her neighbors wanted this to happen, and could I possibly affect a positive outcome at my neighborhood council? Through a course of many conversations, I clearly stated to her on many occasions that my job as president was not to affect a positive outcome through lobbying, but to allow my neighborhood council to make up their mind, which they did do overwhelmingly, to not support this. It was stated that she needed to build a political base because she was running for CD2, and this was her way to get into it. This group has cleaned up their act and done their homework today, but it has not been so the last 10 months. It has been a vile and hateful campaign against Van Nuys, who is trying so hard to revitalize itself in the wake of hard economic times, crime, and changes in the community. You know, our entire Van Nuys is being judged on a 2-mile corridor of Van Nuys Boulevard and its condition, which is horrible. It's a terrible place. We understand that. They say they've said to us that we're ambivalent about our community, yet we were given a steam cleaner by Yosef Yaroslavsky, and the neighbors actually get out and ride it on Van Nuys Boulevard to clean the streets on Saturday and Sunday morning. We work with the community, we work with LAPD, we work with the community, with the schools, the private schools, the public schools. We're constantly looking at and carefully winnowing and in either denying or approving large projects, even in their community that they're speaking of. The historic thing. I'm the founder of the only historic zone in the San Fernando Valley. I know something about what it takes to be historic. There may have been a commonality in terms of when they were built, but beyond that, no. The schools, no. My daughter went to school in Bel Air, Porter Ranch, Sherman Oaks Center for Emergent Studies, which is in Reseda, by the way. Everybody who lives in the South Central Valley shops in Sherman Oaks. So these arguments are just specious. When they came to us, we tried to get to the bottom of things about this, and finally at the end of their meeting with us in September, they admitted that a lot of this was about perceptions. This is about perceptions on a lot of levels, and it's about perceptions of Van Nuys. So the contention is leaving Van Nuys won't hurt Van Nuys, but that's far from the truth. It will reduce our ability to attract investors and businesses. It will assist in continuing to promote the negative image of Van Nuys. It will set our efforts back to improve back a decade. And now for the flesh and blood of this side, the fight and the ugliness from this name change group has wounded Van Nuys deeply. The Van Nuys community has been humiliated by derogatory comments made publicly at the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council meetings and the arrogance displayed. The group claims to be part of the complexion and values of Sherman Oaks, not Van Nuys. Stakeholders in the greater Van Nuys have found these comments to be vile and hateful, and I have come to understand that these words have set cultural relations back in our community 40 years. But the part of Sherman Oaks group doesn't think they're hurting anybody by wanting to leave. Where does it stop? When will people realize that opinions and words hurt others? And when will they stop misrepresenting the truth for their own profit? I personally was accused of vandalizing a home in the area in question in the Daily News. I was also accused of collusion with Ms. Barad about the name change, that we conspired to vote against this in secret meetings, none of which was true. I never even lobbied my own board. I was accused of illegally changing a vote on this matter, none of which happened. It was spin and twisted publicity put out by the part of Sherman Oaks group. I had to have the city attorney appointed to our board to handle the fallacious accusations, all of which were found to be untrue. But we stood our ground and stuck to what we knew to be what was right and good for Van Nuys. Ms. Healy called me on several occasions and lobbied for cause. And again, I had to tell her that I was not put into office to build her political base, but I was put into office to serve the entire Van Nuys community for its betterment. As I stated in the beginning, I have my doubts about this issue being self-determination. Rather, I come to understand it is about self-interest, self-absorption, self-aggrandizement, self-centeredness, and self-involvement. And this brings me to my last comment. It's about governance and politics. I understand that Councilperson Gruhl has taken the position to support the name change. While I respect and like Ms. Gruhl a great deal and consider her a friend, and have supported her on many occasions, I cannot agree with the decision in this case. There is a much bigger vision that is needed here. Fortunately, that was recognized by the Van Nuys Neighborhood Council and Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council when both NCs overwhelmingly voted not to support the name change. This is about the greater good and protecting those that have no voice and are intimidated by the process, and to make a better life for all. It should never be about oiling the squeaky wheel and rewarding self-interest. This issue has made one thing perfectly clear to me. Politics clearly has nothing to do with governing rightly. And that is what is at stake here, to protect the minority from mob rule. I urge you not to support this self-serving request and support the greater good for all.
Thank you. Can we have Mr. D'Antona from Wendy Gruhl's office please step forward? This is all his fault.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, council members. First of all, from the councilwoman, thank you for accommodating her calendar and getting this item here. Really appreciate it. Obviously, you see there's a very emotional issue on both sides. So when the councilwoman took all that information in, we went back and reviewed the 2006 policy. And the councilwoman reviewed and tried to figure out what was the reason for the policy and how was it to be enacted. Really, the policy looks to say, is there support within the affected area to make this change? We couldn't find anything that said why you would deny it. Clearly, the only thing that looks like you would deny these would be based on confusion. For instance, naming another community Burbank within the city of Los Angeles, Chatsworth over in Studio City, something to that effect. But if there is no real confusion set in, if there is support among the affected neighbors, then you should support that. Councilwoman reviewed it. The application that was filed was for about 1,800 homes, would have required about 360 signatures based on the policy. They delivered 600 plus signatures on the application. Afterwards, we received close to probably 1,000 communications from supportive neighbors. So based on that and in the policy, the councilwoman felt the only thing to do was to support this and would ask you to do the same.
Thank you. Ms. Hahn?
Well, one of the things I did want to remember was pretty much what he just said was what was the reason of the policy, because we worked on creating a policy for communities changing their names, because prior to that, pretty much if you kind of went to your council member and got their support, you got a name change, and it happened a lot. I remember one time under Mark Ridley Thomas, there was like 4 in one council meeting that was allowed because of he was supportive of it. So we wanted to create a policy. Now, I thought the policy required 500 signatures. Is that correct?
It does.
It does, yeah. It's 500 signatures. Or 20% if it's less. Oh, 20% if it's less than...
If 500 would be less than...
Oh, okay. So clearly they had more than that. Enough, and I think it's compelling that Councilmember Gruhl supports this. I think that weighs heavily on me. I will tell you, I see both sides clearly, and that's kind of what all these issues are. There's always two sides, and everyone has a reason either to be for or against it. It's a very passionate issue. Sort of reminds me of the secession argument. Clearly, the Valley wanted to self-determine their future and their fate and their destiny. And those of us who didn't want them to leave kind of made all those same arguments. Los Angeles was going to be less because the valley would leave. We wouldn't be able to attract the kind of businesses and federal dollars because they leave. So it really reminds me a little bit of that. But in the end, for me, there is a very, very compelling reason why people want to kind of own their own destiny and have something that they have determined works for them. That is compelling to me. And I do respect the neighborhood councils, clearly. I certainly do listen to them. But in this instance, I'm leaning towards supporting the name change because I just believe that I don't think it's going to hurt Van Nuys as much as maybe we're predicting. I think what's hurtful sometimes is having a whole neighborhood or a whole group of residents that would be so angry and bitter that we would deny them something that they clearly have worked a long time on and worked to build consensus for. So I'm tempted to support Councilmember Gruhl in favor of this name change.
I'm thinking of, I believe it's an Arabic saying that you can eat like this or you can eat like this. Doesn't change the food. I don't know why we have this process. I mean, with all due respect, the outcomes are identical before we had this process and after. It's basically whatever the council member says. And we jump through hoops to change names, and in the process, we cause a lot of damage that should not have taken place if we just let the council member decide. That's why when North Hills was created by Councilmember Wax west of the 405, I unilaterally said, okay, then I'm calling Sepulveda east of the 405, North Hills too. And it was done. And guess what? No animosity, no confusion. People liked it. They didn't like it. Joe Wax didn't like it, but, I felt it was if you're going to slight my community, I'm going to upgrade them. And that's what I did. In this case, there are a lot of arguments that just make a whole lot of sense. And not to diminish the arguments of the neighborhood councils, there's so many dynamics at play here. You got to think who's your closer ally here. The neighborhood council of Van Nuys that I got to work with as a neighborhood council in the neighborhood council system, or the people that live in this community. So there is a political bias there that sort of undermines your arguments. I don't buy all the arguments of the proponents, by the way. I think a lot of them. They just don't hold water, but I don't know that they're necessary. I mean, if you want to change the name of your community, who am I to say you shouldn't be able to do that? And I hate to get into all the reasons why. I really just don't want to know. But we have this process, and we have to make a decision. So let me just say that I came into this meeting with the intention to make no recommendation to City Council. I just wanted to pass it on, didn't want to get involved. But I have to tell you that the overwhelming support for the name change within the boundaries is what is compelling. For whatever reasons you state, bogus or appropriate, it's your reason. And it's your name. I mean, if you want to change it, who am I to say no? I would like, it's kind of interesting.
You want me to make that motion?
It's kind of interesting that I'm not finished. We got 20 minutes. No, just kidding.
Okay.
You have to go?
No.
The one thing though, it was interesting, Ms. Hahn, that you said that we created this process because before it was just the council member deciding, but that you tend to lean toward the council member's decision. I think that's exactly why we shouldn't have the process. Let the council member figure out whatever process they want. I'll abide by the rules as they are, and that's why we have this process, a belabored, contentious process that I predict is going to end up in the exact same result if it were under the old process. And that is that there have been, there's, like I said, it took a long time, and yet we are, this committee, it sounds like, is going to send this out with support. I'm very familiar with this community. I represented it for a time as a state senator. It is distinctly different from the border, from Tiara north. That's a very commercial area on Oxnard, and frankly, I think that is going to enhance Van Nuys's opportunities to exhibit its commercial strength. It's going to increase the proportion of commercial and even manufacturing opportunities, and I believe they will be able to use that to enhance their economic development opportunities. My dad has lived in the San Fernando Valley since 1920. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he lived in the San Fernando Valley since 1923. And, when he was raised in North Hollywood, Sun Valley, I think Sun Valley was called something like Waco or something, and then it was changed to Roscoe. I used to ask my dad, why do you always call Sun Valley Park Roscoe Park? And he said, because it used to be Roscoe. And I didn't realize, but it was the whole community of Roscoe. But I knew it as Sun Valley. And the dynamics have changed dramatically. With regard to where you shop, it's not just the Westfield Mall. It's where you buy your groceries. That's what makes a community. Where you get your hair cut. Where you gather in the parks. Those things are pertinent to defining, to naming a community, to naming those aren't specious arguments whatsoever. That's the one point I did want to make against your argument to the neighborhood councils. And this is no disrespect to the neighborhood councils. It's a tough decision. Van Nuys is a very prominent community in the history of Los Angeles. Many people have many memories of Van Nuys Boulevard in many different respects, and I think Van Nuys High School was really interesting. Ms. Barad, you used the argument. Their argument to use the schools was specious, but we all go to Van Nuys High, and I thought that was an interesting contradiction because you were using the same argument, and so I think that all in all, it boils down to, a compelling desire of the people who live in the bordered areas that desire the change, with the support of the council member who has a far greater sensitivity to the issue, and including the political sensitivities, which are pertinent in this discussion, and so with that. I'll accept the motion from Ms. Hahn.
So moved.
To approve the name change, and with my support as well.
Just a quick technical
You want
point.
to change it to Dantona?
I love it. Moved. No, there's one. The western border is showing right now is west side of Sepulveda. It should be the 405 because it would leave out two properties that are literally between the west side of Sepulveda and the 405.
Where is it again? Say that again.
The western border right now is showing as the west side of Sepulveda. And there's two properties right behind it that go back on like Peach or something. And so it technically should be on the 405. I've discussed this with Ms. Healy, that the 405 should be the western border.
Show me.
A couple of properties right here.
Yeah, so just a technicality that if you are going to approve that it go to the 405 be the western border.
Yeah.
Well, that changes my opinion.
I should have kept my mouth shut. Sorry.
That was okay until you showed me that.
That changed. Yeah, we have to go through the whole process again.
No, and the other thing is, I love L.A. I was born and raised in L.A., so I love L.A., and I think anything that gives neighborhoods or communities a reason to love where they live and their neighborhood even more, then I'm for it. Because I think we live in a big city. But if we can feel like we live in a small town, then I think that helps the mood and of everyone. So I think if this helps you to love where you live more, to love the city you reside in more, and it helps you to, you know, kind of buy into something that's enjoyable, then I'm all for it.
We need to have you drive down Van Nuys or Ventura Boulevard so you can get that small town feel. But Ms. Hahn, you amend the motion as requested by
Yes.
Mr. D'Antona.
Yes.
And
So amended.
I second that. And with that, this matter is approved. We do have. And I hope that if nothing else, that maybe all of you will participate in your neighborhood council elections. Okay. With that, we do have a couple of public comment cards that are unrelated to this item, so I'm going to take those. Augustin Cebada? Cebada or Cebada? Agostino was right the first time. Okay.
Gave a copy of what I'm going to say to the members of the committee, and I'll just briefly summarize it. We've been having problems in the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council with the marginalization of the Spanish-speaking stakeholders and board members, and the process has the fact that is taking place that has affected the revision of the bylaws that took place since October and November, and not another meeting of the bylaws committee until May, and finally it was done without participation by the Spanish-speaking community because none of the documents were translated, or the revisions that were proposed to the document were not translated, so the people were marginalized, could not participate. And this is in a community of 65% Spanish-speaking, despite what's been going on there and the demographic changes over the last 3 or 4 years. So we ask that this committee take this up and bring it to the attention of Dunn, and that this process be recalled, and that the pertinent documents be translated for the benefit of the Spanish-speaking community so that they can participate in this. And, you know, our board is like 10 members are quotes-unquote Latinos, of which several of us speak Spanish primarily. And we need to have the participation by the stakeholders, which is, you know, predominantly Spanish-speaking, Latino, lower income. And it's very important to that neighborhood that they get to participate. So we're asking you that this process be recalled. As you can read there, these bylaws have still not been translated, and during the process, the process of this going forward was done in English only, and that it marginalized the Spanish-speaking community. Thank you.
Peggy, have you taken this up to the city attorney?
Yes, we have filed 2 grievances, myself and Ms. Sanchez, my wife, who's also a board member.
But has the city attorney reviewed it?
No, we haven't.
I would recommend that you talk to the city attorney about reviewing this, because...
Okay, I'll give them a copy of this. We understand that the process through Dunn is going to be on our... We did not have a grievance committee, so we filed the grievances directly with Dunn, so then they brought it to the attention of the neighborhood
I understand,
council.
but what I'm saying is this may transcend the rules of the city, and there may be other rules. This is not an item on the agenda. You're allowed to speak only under public comment.
Okay.
And so I can't take any other action.
Okay, I'll transmit it.
But I do recommend that you talk to the city attorney. Ida, is it Talaya? Talala. Okay.
Good morning, Council Member Alarcon and Chairman. And I'm here, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am here to ask for the decertification of the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council. in conjunction with your mentioning of speaking to the deputy city attorney about the matter of having this material brought back to the neighborhood council, we cannot access the deputy because the rules are only the chief information officer can have access to the city attorney's office. The situation is rather difficult and impossible to deal with, and anything to alleviate and allow equitable and equal access, especially during these troubled times, would be deeply appreciated.
But first of all, the city attorney represents all the people of Los Angeles. You said there's a rule that
Yes.
prohibits you from going to the
Yes.
city attorney.
Yes.
What rule is that?
This is a rule that the neighborhood council envisioned with the support of Dunn, that only one person on each neighborhood council can have access to have their questions answered by the city attorney. We have appealed
Okay,
it.
I believe that may apply only to somebody representing the neighborhood council, but anybody can go directly to the city attorney as an individual.
I'll just respond briefly. Gwen
Thank you.
Poindexter. The City Attorney's Office have established communication protocols with the neighbor councils. We work with the presidents and the board and the liaisons so that we can respond to board inquiries. And we also work with individual board members if they have individual conflict of interest questions. Because of our staffing, we
But
can't.
that doesn't prohibit any individual from coming directly to the city
Correct.
attorney with a question about neighborhood council.
It's been precluded, but in interest of
I'm
time.
challenging your
Thank
statement,
you.
ma'am.
Thank
You're
you.
wrong.
I'm happy. I'm happy
Good.
to learn it.
Then you should go directly to the city attorney.
Absolutely, they will hear from me.
We have heard from
You're welcome.
We have appealed to Dan Bonk and the Neighborhood Council Executive Committee to no avail. As in the case of the bylaws being changed, no appeals were listened to, and that is a sad reflection. There is sufficient evidence that this neighborhood council cannot and will not work with community. There has been far too many poor management decisions over the years, and the current board, under the present slate of executive, providing leadership that has left key community groups unwilling to jeopardize their operations and even foregoing neighborhood council funding. Decertification is the least painful way to conclude this experiment in neighborhood governance. And I have come to this committee to appeal because the process is extremely excruciating and painful the way Dunn is handling it. Most of this acrimony is the result of poor management at Dunn. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a public comment, so there is no action item before us, but thank you very much. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
July 14.